We are learning the lesson, the sound mission. We stopped there in page number 108, the first paragraph. We'll continue the story, the second paragraph. Till the first paragraph, this page, we learned that Klausner was talking to Mrs. Saunders and explaining to her how the plants and trees also cry in pain, and he wanted to and her to accept it, and she didn't bother to listen, and she went back to her room house, and he also got the things back in his workshop, and as it is became dark, he went back to his house. The next morning, Klausner was up as soon as it was light. So the next morning, he got up early in the morning. He dressed and went straight to the shed, he, to the workshop, which is made of wooden shed. There he went. He picked up the machine and carried it outside, clasping it to his chest with both hands, walking unsteadily under its weight. So it was like a coffin box already set, and he fixed many machines inside the box, so it is heavy for him as an old person, and he carried it with much difficulties as it is heavy for him, and he was walking unsteadily back. He could not walk steadily because of the weight which is pulling. He went past the house, out through the front gate, and across the road to the park. So he was walking very far. Sorry, he crossed. He went past the house. He crossed the house, and also he was crossing the gate. That means he is coming out of his garden and his own house. He is going to some other place. And yesterday he had checked that sound of plucking the rose by Mrs. Saunders. It was in the garden only. But now he is going out of his garden to the park. So he had to cross the road, carrying that sound machine, crossing the road and reaching the park. There he paused and looked around him. He stopped there in the park a little bit and he looked around him. Then he went on until he came to a large tree where to keep the machine he was looking for, and he reached a big tree. There, a peach tree, and he placed the machine on the ground close to the trunk of the tree. So he kept it near the tree, that was a beech tree, and there he kept the machine near the trunk of the tree. Quickly he went back to the house and got an axe from the coal cellar and carried it across the road into the park. So he kept it, and immediately he thought of something. He went back very quickly to the wooden house, crossing the road and reaching the house and opening the wooden shed, and picked up something. And in that cellar, he picked an axe, and he put the axe on the ground beside the tree. So he brought it to the park and he put it beside the tree next to that box. Then he looked around him again, peering nervously through his thick glasses in every direction. So he is unsteady already. We have seen, like a madman, he was with trembling, nervous, something he is afraid of, like that he was behaving. There was no one about. It was 6 in the morning. No one was there in the park, only early in the morning. It was 6 o'clock. He put the earphone on his head and switched on the machine. So he fixed the earphone on his head and he listened for a moment to the faint, familiar humming sound. He could hear the familiar sound, that humming sound. Then he picked up the axe, took a stance with his legs wide apart, and swung the axe as hard as he could at the base of the tree trunk. So he wanted to check the sound which is produced by the trunk of the tree when he cut it with the axe. So he just swung the axe and just he struck it on the trunk, and the blade cut deep into the wood and stuck there. So he, with the full strength, he cut the trunk, so it went deep, the axe went deep and it stuck into the wood of the trunk. And at the instant of impact, he heard a most extraordinary noise in the earphone. As he has fixed the earphone also, when he was cutting that, he could hear the noise of that in that earphone. A harsh, noteless, enormous noise. A harsh noise, very bad noise. A growling, low pitched, screaming sound, not quick and short like the noise of the roses, but drawn out like a sob, lasting for fully a minute, loudest at the moment when the axe struck, fading gradually fainter and fainter until it was gone. So when Mr. Saunders was plucking the rose, it was only faint, screaming. But here it was louder, and then slowly it went off. Klausner stared in horror at the place where the blade of the axe had sunk into the wood flesh of the tree. So now the axe is stuck into the wood, that flesh of the wood part, the soft part of the trunk, it is there. So he was horror to see that. Then gently he took the axe handle, so he was picking it out. So he was trying to remove the axe from the wood, worked the blade loose and threw the thing on the ground. So he removed the blade from that and threw it out. He felt very bad. With his fingers, he touched the gash that the axe had made in the wood, touching the edges of the gash, trying to press them together to close the wound. And he kept saying, "Tree, oh tree, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, but it will heal, fine, don't worry." He was feeling very bad for wounding that tree. And after throwing the axe handle, he just, that tree was opened, so he was bringing it closer and making it to be stick, like when we get a wound on our hands, if we press it and it will be, that circulation will be there and it will be all right. So like that he was treating it as a human wound which is got in a human body. So he was just pressing the gap on the gash and pressing it closer and trying it, and he was feeling so sad for wounding the tree, and he was with crying. He is saying that, "My tree, oh tree, I'm so sorry, I wounded you." And he was feeling very bad, and he was comforting that tree also. So it will be healed, it will be healed. For a while he stood there with his hands upon the trunk of the great tree. He felt very bad for wounding the tree, and he was holding that wound, and he was standing there for few minutes. Then suddenly he turned away and hurried off out of the park across the road, and immediately he thought of something. So he behaves in an inorderly manner, no abnormal way. So he ran and came out of the park and across the road, and rushing to somewhere where, through the front gate and back into his house, that house he came. He went to the telephone, consulted the book. So he took the telephone book and looking for a number there, dialed a number and waited. He dialed the number and he was holding the receiver of the phone and waiting for the call to be received. He had the receiver tightly in his left hand and tapped the table impatient, and he was not at all patient, and he was tapping the table and waiting for the call to be picked up. And with the right, he heard the telephone buzzing at the other hand, and then the click of a lifted receiver and a man's voice, a sleepy voice saying, "Hello, yes," and whom he called. That man received the receiver, and he was in a sleepy voice, "Hello, who are you?" And yes, like that. "Dr. Scott," he said, and "Hello, yes, Dr. Scott." And he was asking that, "Is it Dr. Scott?" "Yes, speaking." "Yes, I'm Dr. Scott speaking." He is in a sleepy mood. "Dr. Scott, you must come at once, quickly, please." So he was in a hurry. He is calling him, "Sir, doctor, please come quickly. You should come quickly." And who was in sleepy, he is asking, "Who is speaking?" "Klausner here, and do you remember what I told you last night about my experience with sound? How I hoped I might." So he was reminding that whom with whom he is speaking, and he wanted to introduce himself, and he's telling that, "I am the person who talked to you yesterday about the sound machine, and how I wish to be proved that we can hear that." All these things he was reminding. And "Yes, yes, of course, but what's the matter? Are you ill?" Then he asked, "Are you not keeping well?" "No, I'm not ill, but it's 6:30 in the morning," the doctor said, "and you call me, but you are not ill." So he got annoyed that, half it is only 6:30 early in the morning. You are calling me for nothing when you are not ill. Why are you calling me? That is the question. So you are not ill, then why are you calling me in the early morning? What is the matter? "Please come quickly. I want someone to hear it. It's driving me mad. I can't believe it." So he was telling the doctor that, "I heard something. I want someone to hear it and understand that. So I'm going mad." And the doctor heard the frantic, almost hysterical note in the man's voice. The same note he was used to hearing in the voices of people who called up and said, "There has been an accident. Come quickly." He said slowly, "You really want me to get out of bed and come over now?" So the doctor could understand the man who is unsteady or abnormal, how the voice, in his voice, he can understand that he is not in normal way. And he could hear the voice of him equally, like a person who met with an accident, or a place where the accident took place, people who calls him. How do they call? The same tone he could understand. "Come quickly," he said slowly. "You really want me to get out of bed and come over now?" So he is questioning Klausner that, "You want me at present, immediately you want me to be there?" "Yes, now, at once, please." "All right, then I'll come." So the doctor accepted his call, and he said, "I'm coming." Klausner sat down beside the telephone and waited. So he is waiting for the doctor to come, and he is sitting beside the telephone and waiting for him. He tried to remember what the shriek of the tree had sounded like, but he couldn't. So he was trying to recall the sound which the tree produced. He could remember only that it had been enormous and frightful, and that it had made him feel sick with horror. So he is not able to recollect the sound, but he can understand that that was really horrible sound. He tried to imagine what sort of noise a human would make it. He had to stand anchor to the ground while someone deliberately swung a small sharp thing at his leg, so that the blade cut in deep and wedged itself in the cut. So he is imagining how the feeling would be, the tree, how it would have felt. So he is imagining, and he is thinking that, as if a man is made to stand, and his piercing, sharp thing is fixed on his leg to the ground, as if how he will cry, how he will feel the pain, that much of pain that tree could feel and express it. That's what he is imagining. And same sort of noise, perhaps. I think that was the noise. No, quite different. Perhaps he said that it was like the heart feeling of a human, how he will feel if he is nailed by someone. So after that, he's thinking, no, no, worse than that. The noise of the tree was worse than any known human noise because of that frightening. That noise was worse than the noise which will be produced by a man who is nailed. It was because toneless, throatless, and it was a frightening sound. He began to wonder about other living things. So, he was keep thinking about the other living things which will shriek or make painful sound. So while he was sitting and waiting for the doctor, he is thinking of some other thing also. And he was thinking, he began to wonder about other living things, and he thought immediately his thought went to the wheat field, of a field of wheat, a wheat field, a wheat field where the wheat is ready for harvest. A field of wheat standing up straight and yellow and alive with the mower going through it. So, as if he is imagining that stretched wheat field, it is standing with yellow, that means ready for harvest, full of corn. And when the cutting machine move going through it, cutting the stems, so it will cut in bunches. So 500 stems a second. The machine, the harvesting machine will cut the crops in such a way, in bunches it will cut. So in a second it will cut 500 stems every second. Oh my god, what would the noise be like? He was imagining one stem shrieks like anything. If it is of 500 steps, what a shriek it will be, what a noise it would be. He is just imagining. And lads screaming together, and every second another 500 being cut and screaming. And no, he thought he could not imagine that much. I do not want to go to a wheat field with my machine. So immediately he is coming to the conclusion that I never take my machine to the wheat field where the harvest goes, and it will be a terrible noise. I would never eat bread after that. If I go to the wheat field and with the machine, if I hear the shriek of the stems, I will not be able to eat any bread after that. So I will never go there. But what about potatoes and cabbages and carrots and onions? So he was thinking of the vegetables. All the vegetables also come out of the plants only. It is also been plucked and cut, and what it would be, what kind of noise it would be creating. And what about apples? Then he was thinking of apples. He was keep thinking of the living things, what all he is removed and cut. Oh no, apples are all right. Okay, apples are all right because it fall from the tree on its own after it ripes. They fall off naturally when they are ripe. Apples are all right if you let them fall off instead of tearing them from the tree branch. If it falls, it's okay instead of pulling it down. But not vegetables. Vegetables will produce a horrible sound only. Not a potato, for example, because a potato would surely shriek. So would a carrot and an onion and cabbage. So all these vegetables will surely shriek. So it is intolerable. I cannot hear it. He was keep thinking of one after the other while he was imagining and thinking and feeling bad for all the vegetables which are being removed from its plant. So while he was thinking, he heard the click of the front gate. So someone is opening the latch over there, and he jumped up and went out and saw the tall doctor coming down the patch, little black bag in hand. So he is carrying his bag and walking on the walk path. So he was so happy to see him. And yeah, well, the doctor said, well, what's all the trouble? So the doctor reached his place. Now the doctor and Klausner will have the other talk. So let's see that in the next class.